ELIMINIZE.com/Atlanta, lemonize.com/Atlanta. Lemonize service for odor-free, clean, fresh air, proud sponsors of everything SDH. That's promo. That's halftime. And so that means we get into hour number 2. Nico Moreno from the Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports joining us at 10:30, 10:35-ish. But you know what that means. Since it's playoff time, we bring in Kaylor Hodges. Kaylor is ready to go. And I warned Kaylor. I said, you realize now that we're in the postseason that you cannot be just you, the USL show, and everyone else associated with it. You can no longer be just monthly visitors.
No.
You've got to be weekly for the duration of the playoffs. You have been summarily warned. Get Morrissey out of his PhD classes and get him in here too.
Yeah, you know, we've all been trying to figure it out. We have one of our guys who's in Charlotte right now who he just moved, and he's like, I can probably do it after I get done moving. So this is a formal message to you, Ryan. Stop being so lazy and having a real job and moving across the state. No one cares. Come on, dude.
Exactly. Starting hour number 2 on Thursdays for the duration of the USL playoffs. Our friends from the USL show are hopping on to break down everything when it comes to said playoffs. And my first question, Kaylor, is looking back at the regular season. When it comes to surprises, good and bad, looking at who's in the playoffs and who is not, what surprises you from the regular season as we head into the postseason?
You know, massive surprise to me, which isn't fair at all, is I mean, honestly, just how good Pittsburgh was. And, you know, it's one of those things that Bob Lilly and trust, and we really should just trust Lily Ball at this point. But no one expected this. Everybody who did their previews this year said they don't have a goal scorer. They lost all their goal scorers in Alex Dixon, Russell Cicerone. Their back line is not what it once was. It felt like they got good guys, but who was going to back them up? We didn't know where it was going to come from. And even Dikwa, if you talk to people from St. Louis and other places, they made stops along the way. None of them thought this was him. Nobody thought he had this in his locker. And really, it was just one of those things that nobody had faith in them. And, you know, in Lily Ball, you trust, you have to now. And
well, but the thing is, he's going to yell at you if you don't.
This is true. This is very true. I mean, we talked to Brandon Miller a while back, and he was talking about how he got told that he won, I think it was goalkeeper of the year in the USL in 2015, I do believe. And within, he was like, hey, congrats on that. By the way, you have 2 days to clear out your locker. Like, there's just no filter on this guy. This is just who he is. But this really is the best Pittsburgh team that I can remember in a long time. And it's a shock considering that they lost all of their guys. And I think there's a reason for that. We might talk about that later. As for a shock of bad, I mean, I'm a little bit shocked of Oakland. Paul Blanchett had a career year, and they do this every year where they kind of sneak into the playoffs and then they just beat somebody. That's kind of their thing. And I thought this year was shaping up to be a good year. And then they lose their best players and they trade them away. And Paul Blanchett, who was a shooting dummy all year long, eventually started to have a little bit of holes in your game because you cannot do that for 34 games. And they missed the playoffs. And I was shocked because there was a while where I thought they were real deal title contenders.
And then they completely and totally just went. I mean, literally, it's like Wile E. Coyote missing the Roadrunner at the edge of the cliff, and you just kind of look over the edge and you just see the roots sadly just kind of work their way down, and you see the puff of smoke at the bottom.
Yeah.
When you mentioned, well, since you're talking Pittsburgh, let's go ahead and keep talking Pittsburgh. I mean, Dikwa got your golden boot. Bob Lilly still continues to yell and scream and get results.
Yeah, well,
but you're saying that there's some other stuff at play here about how folks are either responding to or not responding to Bob Lilly. What's going on?
Dikwa, I mean, he is as number 9 as number 9 can get.
Yeah.
Think about MLS, think about Europe, think about USL, think about UPSL, NPSL, any of the whatever you want acronyms that we have in the United States.
Mhm.
How many goal scorers? How many people can you think of with 20 plus goals with 0 assists?
Wow.
And honestly, I think it comes with a ruthlessness. And I think that they were kind of missing that last year.
Yeah.
Russell Cicerone is equal distributor as he is scorer. Same with Alex Dixon.
Yep.
And this is the first time that Bob Lilly has had a true replacement for a guy like Nico Brett,
Mhm.
who Nico Brett was bona fide goal scorer, does not assist very much, just ruthless in front of net. In a weird way, I don't want to say that Bob Lilly ball, I don't want to mean Lilly ball got pretty, but I feel like they got people up front who were looking for two options to pass or score. Meanwhile, Deke was like, I'm getting my foot through the ball and it's going into the back of the net.
Yeah.
Who cares if there's a pass beside me? I'm shooting. And I think that kind of ruthlessness, along with the ruthlessness of their backline, complements each other really well. And I think that's what's elevated this team from being pretty good to honestly one of the best teams I've seen in a long time.
So, is it safe to say that they are your favorite period? Not just Eastern Conference, but favorite?
They've only lost one game at home all season long. And they played teams like Sacramento at home where they drew. They played other teams like San Antonio where they played well. Pretty much everybody in the East has gone defeated at Highmark Stadium. It's you don't want to go there. That said, I think their toughest test is their round one. I think Detroit City is their toughest test because I don't think there's anybody else in the league that can make this a 0-0 all the way through 120 and it gets to PKs. I think this one has the chance to be the most boring game you've ever seen. But also it really puts Bob Lilly to the test because Nate Steinwasser is still a dog. I mean, you still have Zach Carroll, you still have Amu Mensah, you still have Michael Bryant, who they will stand on their head and they love it. They love doing the dirty work. There's nothing they enjoy more. And let's say Detroit City gets one, they get one goal from somewhere. Who knows? Magic can happen. I don't see more than 2 goals going against this Detroit City team in a way. So this one has the best chance of going 0-0, 1-1 into PKs. And from there, you kind of have, I mean, Waite is great, but I mean, Nate Steinwasser is kind of a different cat. And I think that's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is very, very interesting. You go on decision day and you mentioned mucking it up, and that's what Detroit City did. I mean, the game at Pittsburgh didn't necessarily mean a whole hell of a lot, but you got to see at Keyworth, they just kind of mucked it up to where they wouldn't lose the game.
Yep.
And they got the point they needed. The Miami FC had to go to Sacramento, get a result they didn't. And so because of the way the tiebreakers work and it's head-to-head, Detroit City goes in over the Miami FC and becomes your 8 seed to play Pittsburgh in round number 1. Your 2-7, Tampa Bay, and a group that you kind of get to see a whole lot of on a day-to-day basis. Birmingham. Is this one Tampa Bay's and Birmingham is chasing right now, you think?
Birmingham versus Tampa Bay is the only matchup in all of the round 1 playoffs that one team swept the series. No other sweeps happened in all of the playoffs between League One and the championship. And Birmingham took it. Birmingham took the sweep. And I think, really get into the nitty gritty. I talked to a couple of guys this last couple of weeks of that, or the last couple of days, talking about this. Legion have found a system in the 4-1-4-1 that works best for them.
Yeah.
I think this is the system that Legion should have been playing all year, but I also think it's the one system that Tampa Bay can exploit perfectly. And when Legion beat Tampa Bay both times, they're playing a 4-2-3-1 with Matthew Corcoran who is a U17 capped player now and is going to be sold for a lot of money. And they had Anderson Asiadu, who, while on the roster, is no longer with the club. Your backup CDM is Mikey Lopez, who's been in the door since literal day one, but he has an injury. And so you're left with Enzo Martinez playing CDM. And while he's capable, he's more than competent there. I trust him there. If you're going to beat Tampa Bay, you have to have a strong spine. And I think a part of that is having two holding midfielders, and that's a part of shutting them down because Cal Jennings, Dennis, JJ Williams, Leo Fernandez, if he gets some playing time, Lewis Hilton, that center of the field is so strong that if you don't concede the wings and if you only focus on the center and you say you can beat us out wide, we will not give you the center. That's the way to beat them. But if you're in a 4-1-4-1 and you only have that one CDM back there, good luck. There's just so much firepower. I think that Tampa Bay takes it.
What about Indy and Charleston? I mean, Charleston for me sometimes ends up like the Forrest Gump box of chocolates.
Yep.
And you're trying to figure out which version of Ben Pierman's group you're going to get. They finished up with the 3, and they kind of stumbled at the end, losing 2 of their last 3. Indy for me can be sneaky, and I think that they've kind of flown below the radar in the Eastern Conference. I don't know why that is, but it just seems like they just kind of done their thing. They're a 500 club. They've won 2 of their last 3, unbeaten in their last 3, and they were unbeaten in 4 of their last 5. I think Indy can cause problems for Charleston here in round 1.
I think when you look at the table, it doesn't really show Indy that well because it is hard to fathom just how bad Indy was to start the season. And then they caught fire, right? Meanwhile, you talk about this Charleston team and just how they were just kind of floating. And frankly, their defense at times was pretty rough. But with the addition of Mark Segbers, who is playing on the left and not the right side that we're used to, Dodson still, playing on the right side. I think defensively it's a little bit more sound than it was. I think a big deal here is I think all 3 of those games, the 2 of the last 3 defeats, Fidel Barajas was with Mexico.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that one player can do that, but he's the first player to get named to, that top 60 Wonder Kids list in USL history. He is that guy. He is that kind of player that can really, flip this game on its head. And Marcanis, really did a good job at filling in, but no one in this league is Fidel Barajas. And I think that is enough to really flip it on its head. That said, this Indy team, they have the team to do it. They're not afraid. They get jokingly called the 2018 All-Stars for a reason, but also they've been there. They've done that. They've won it. They've been to every place that you can imagine and won. You have to back them there, but also Charleston at home is such a fortress to the point that they added seats this year to fit in more fans. They added seating. You don't see that a lot in the USL where midway through a year they say we don't have enough seats for people. And I think this place is going to be rocking. Patriots Point is going to be crazy. I think Indy is one of the better teams one of the teams that I think could take it from Charleston, but it's hard for me to see Charleston losing at home.
And in the 4 or 5 in the East, it's Lou City and Memphis.
Yeah,
Lou City for me, I haven't been able to get a good gauge on them all season long. It's like when you think that they're going to get a good run of form, then they stub their toe and then they fall off the scooter and they scrape themselves on the sidewalk. And with Memphis's firepower, I will admit that for me, the midseason deal with FC Tulsa, with Rodrigo and Philip Goodrum changing locations.
Yeah.
I initially was like, I had the thought bubble question marks over my head, but it has worked with Rodrigo and Memphis 901, Stephen Glass, and that group, which is basically Atlanta United West.
Yeah.
Is the 4 seed. I like Memphis in this one, but I think it might be tighter depending on which Lou City team shows up.
When we are doing a USL show, like you predict the playoffs, and we're just kind of getting the gauge of how teams or how fans think this is going to go. 63% of them think that Lou City is going to win, and I think 63% of the people are idiots. I I know there's a way that you're kind of voting with the badge, you're voting for the name. You are talking about this is Lou City. They, in their entire existence of 8, 9 years now, they have never missed the Eastern Conference Finals. And for people who are MLS people who don't follow the USL, I mean, I want you to imagine that, I guess around the same time, you're looking at Atlanta United never missing the Eastern Conference Finals. That's what Lou City have done. But this feels like a different Lou City team.
Yep.
I think Aiden McFadden is the truth. I don't understand how he doesn't have a place in Atlanta. I don't get it. But that's not my place.
Brooks Lennon and Caleb Wiley.
Yeah, but McFadden's so anyway. He's so good. And this Lou City team, unlike years past, and we talked about this, where we were talking about kind of because MLB playoffs are on, and I love baseball, so this is where my head is right now. It was Alan Underwood mentioned, hey, why can't they do like a Phillies run last year where they got hot at the end and they make a run to the playoffs? If any team can do it, it's Lou City. They have the experience. They can do that. I would also say the Phillies could hit the ball and they had 2 starters. I can't tell you a single thing that Lou City do really well. And that sounds so mean because this is Louisville City. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying they do anything poorly, but they don't do anything amazingly. Meanwhile, this Memphis team can score goals.
Yeah, man.
They can score goals. And if this becomes a shootout at AutoZone Park, Lou City has not shown all year long that they can do that. They haven't shown that they can put 2 goals together, let alone 3+, which is probably what Memphis is going to do. I'm taking Memphis.
Okay, now let's talk about the 4 teams that did not make the playoffs.
Yep.
And your overall observations on what's going on with them. You mentioned the Miami FC. They got hot late, but didn't get the win in Sacramento to finish up at 41 points. FC Tulsa, we talked about the trade. Philip Goodrum heading over. Rodrigo leaving. Loudon, we know what Loudon's purpose is. And Hartford Athletic bringing in Nick Sakevich, the former commissioner of the National Lacrosse League. He knows what it's like to run an organization. Horrendous season in Hartford at 424-6. When you look at those 4 teams, what comes to mind?
Tulsa, I love their future. I think Tulsa has built this team for the future. I think they have a good grasp on how to do this. I really believe in what Tulsa's doing. Also like what Loudon's doing. Going from a dependent club to an independent club is hard. It's so much easier to go the other way because you get the funding, you get the players. You don't have to worry about building a roster. They build it for you. They had to do it the hard way. And I think early on, they were as hot as you can be. And then they realized, hey, this is harder than we thought. And I think that's okay. I like where Loudon's going. The Miami, I've said it before, until they show me that they can, I don't believe in them.
Yeah.
I just don't. And yes, they got hot at the very end, but we do this every year. Well, this Miami team, look at the names on the paper, look who they have, and they got hot at the end. They can make a real run. No, they can't. They can't until they prove to me that they can. No, they can't. And Hartford has the lowest point total in USL history that was not from a 2 team.
Yeah.
You would have guessed that was going to be Las Vegas Lights. No, this Hartford team was miserable. And they can score goals. Prince is a good player. I really rate Joe Rice, their keeper. And I know you look at the goals scored and you say, no way. But also that back line was horrendous and awful. It's one of those back lines. And I say this and it sounds awful. But if you're a USL team, you see the people on that back line. And it's one of those situations of we don't want them. Look at what they did. And that sounds awful, but that's real. And Hartford, they have one of the best fan bases in the USL, straight up. They are so loyal. They are great. And they just have not been rewarded. And it drives me crazy, but they're just bad.
All right, so let's do the same thing with the teams that didn't make it in the West. You talked about Roots. RGV had a bit of a rush at the end, and they got the win at the end, but they just came up short.
Yep.
You talked about Roots. Monterey Bay started out great, and then that group just literally, the engine fell out on the curb. The hood went up oil went everywhere, and that car was just smoking on the side of the road for the longest time. And you talked about Vegas, but the 4 teams that didn't make it in the West.
Monterey Bay is the team that I believe in kind of the most. They have this issue though, where we talked about it before about their shots on goal to goal percentage. It's still crazy. If I'm remembering right, I think it's still hovering around 35 to 40%. Just under half of their shots on target go in. The issue is that the games that they don't score, they don't put a single shot on target. And it's just one of those things that I don't understand it, but I'd still believe in the players. I think their back line is real if they can keep it together. I kind of hurt for them because it felt like this was the year and I was really believing in it. For Oakland, you got to do something with that back line to help out Paul Blanchette.
Yep.
You lose Neville to international, and this was a back line that was already fighting for its life that just got its life support pulled. The lights is the lights. That's all I have to say about that.
Yes.
And RGV, they always seem to backdoor their way in.
Yep.
Every single year, they backdoor their way in, and they came dang close. If they hold off Sacramento, they're in. They were up 3-1, I think, and then they managed, or 2-1, 2-0, and then they fall apart, and that's kind of been RGV's season. I question the I guess I don't know how to say this nice. I question the ownership there.
Yeah.
Because it feels like every year. And they also a team that went from dependent to independent, going from Dynamo to being their own thing.
Right.
But it's been long enough. They should figure it out. I kind of question the commitment there. And if this next year they don't put together a more competitive team, I don't know how much more you're going to be seeing RGV in the championship anyway.
Okay. Well, that's what League One is for in the situations like that. And they need a presence in the Midwest without question. The 8 that did make it, New Mexico United won 3 on the spin to get in. They are the 8, but it's crazy. It's like there's 2 groups basically when it comes to your point totals, and Sacramento. Yes. And I want to plug what Morrissey wrote, and it wasn't a depressing song. It was a song about his MVP, and it's someone tied to Atlanta United folks and who they remember with Atlanta United too, and Jack Gurr. I'll ask you about your MVP candidate in Morrissey's column at the end. Is it Sacramento and everybody else for you, or can a team like San Antonio, who knows what it means to get through a postseason, knows what it means to win a championship, knows what it takes, can they be a team to work their way through?
You talk about Sacramento, and they're so good. And there's one thing we always talk about on the USL show. Sacramento does not lose at home. They don't. In the last 2 years, they have lost 3 times at home. In the last 2 calendar years, they have lost 3 times. They don't lose at home. They are truly the indomitable at home. Meanwhile, New Mexico, they did not backdoor their way in. They look dang good. And they have this press that is crazy. Zico Bailey has moved from a wingback position into playing more central midfield, and he is just hyper press. And their wingers are dropping in deep and defending like their lives depend on it. They are, once they get a lead, they really back in. And Sacramento had the scoring talent to do it. Aforementioned earlier, Russell Cicerone, very good at soccer. This is the first time in, I think, 5 years that Sacramento have had a double-digit goal scorer. And you think of them as being a good team, but they've always been good by committee. They have a guy now, and I think that's scary. I think this is another one of those matchups that if Sacramento's going to lose, I think it's going to be to New Mexico. I think it's going to be this 1 versus 8. New Mexico is hot. Their press is incredible. And if they can get that goal, their defense has looked solid lately. And I think that this is one where Sacramento need to be careful. You're talking about San Antonio. I don't know how I feel about them.
Yeah.
They have a similar team as last year, but the self-proclaimed mentality monsters, which we got a funny quote a few months ago. that I think about a lot is self-proclaiming mentality monsters is like nicknaming yourself T-Bone. It's kind of the same thing. The mentality is gone. Where is it? And you look at Jordan Farr on the bench, and Marsman comes in, takes the spot from him. And frankly, this back line has been so disorganized since. They have looked awful relative to San Antonio standards. Farr keeps that back line more in check. So do you put Farr in to have more defensive capability? Well, he hasn't played in 5 games. Do you put someone cold in? I don't know. And this Colorado Springs team is a real dark horse to win it all because it depends on which one you get. They more than anybody else. I have no idea which Colorado Springs team is showing up, which one made it to the airport. You have no clue. But if it's the one that has been good recently, good luck to anybody playing them. They're so good offensively. And I just don't know if I trust this San Antonio back line, which I cannot believe I'm saying that.
Your 2-7 is Orange County, who's got another 10 years, in Irvine going up against El Paso. Phoenix kind of hiccuped their way in, only had 3 points in their last 5 games. They go up against Loyal. Get your Loyal gear now. Switchbacks in San Antonio, I think, take the over when it comes to your point totals, when it comes to opening round matchups with this one. You see a point total, go over it. I think that you're going to get a lot of points at Widener and at Toyota. Before you go, mentioned Morrissey's column where he decided that Jack Gurr from Sacramento is his MVP. Who is your MVP?
Wholeheartedly agree.
Wow.
I think it's Jack Gurr. Okay. I have said it since, I think, week 4 on the USL show. So I feel like I can save receipts here. I've been saying it since the beginning of the season that Jack Gurr is the best player in the league. I really think so. And what he's doing from a right back position is incredible. Is he going to get it? If I had a vote, that's where my vote would go. But probably not. Most people are probably going to vote for Dikwa because goals.
Understood.
But last year should have been Tainer, in my opinion. It wasn't. This year should be Jack Gurr. Jack Gurr is the best player in the USL, and I don't think it's close.
Wow.
He's incredible. If you have not watched him recently, do it. Just focus on the right back. Just watch him. He is stunning.
And so now, since you're with us on a weekly basis, promote what is going on between now and the time that you return in 167 and a half hours from now.
Quick math. We're going to be breaking down every single match. We did League One, which we didn't really hop into that this week, but we did League One. We were doing all League One. We're talking about every single matchup from here on out. Every matchup that you have. We're going to do small recaps, but most of our previews will include recaps. So it's kind of one of those things, chicken egg. We are really excited about that. Going forward, we also have a series we are planning our research on, which is the story of the USL.
Nice.
And it's going to be one of those things that we're going to talk about every single season of the USL from the top all the way down to League 2, telling everything that happened in that calendar year. So we're super stoked about that, getting ready to start the research process on that because that's hard to find.
Yes.
But yeah, I also just want to say this is not USL show specific, but this is USL specific.
Yeah.
You talk about the point total. I don't think there's going to be a higher scoring game than San Diego and Phoenix. These teams love to score for fun. And if you're looking for, the best front 3 in the USL, I think is easily Phoenix between like Arteaga, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on his name, Armanakis, and I cannot remember his name to save my life. This is just tough for me.
It's an early morning, brother. I know.
It's an early morning for me. Goodness gracious. Danny Trejo, not that one. And so between those 3 with Danny Trejo there, and also San Diego at home, sold out, possibly making their final run ever. It's going to be crazy. These teams hate each other. And if you're looking for storybooks, this is about as good as it gets, and it's going to be a goal fest. I'm excited for it.
Very well done. So at Kaylor Hodges at the USL show, and they're going to be with us Thursday mornings at 10 throughout the playoffs, where we will discuss what's going on in the championship and League One, where they reseed. What a novel concept.
So smart. Why doesn't everybody do that?
Kaler, as always, my friend, great to catch up with you. Be safe. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. See ya.
Wow. Kaler Hodges and our friends at the USL show. Scores for fun. See, Kaler